Alright, so what topic to discuss? Let's talk about slavery. Specifically, the form of slavery I want to start talking about is called old-fashioned slavery. Probably what most people think of when they hear the word slavery. You have a dark-skinned person in a field, somebody with white skin sitting on a horse with a whip in their hand. I'll just call this old school slavery. You could call it forced subjugation as well. This camera to stay here. So, old school slavery, I think most people, that particular form of slavery, I think most people would come to the agreement that they don't want to be the slave in that situation. So if you have a situation where somebody is going to whip you if you don't do something they want, probably not a situation you want to be in. You don't want to be the person getting whipped. Not a fun position. In that type of slavery, there was more slavery going on. So, for instance, the physical slavery of the direct physical violence of being beaten with a whip if you didn't complete the task that the person with the whip, the master, was telling you to do. You get beaten, and people didn't want to get beaten. So that's a physical form of slavery. You don't do something for me, I beat you, as an example. Another form of slavery in that particular slavery incident would be mental slavery. For instance, the dark-skinned person in that situation would not have been allowed to read or learn how to read because they might empower themselves in some way. You know, to teach a slave English would be a very big offense in those days. And I'm sure if you were a white person and you taught a dark-skinned person how to read, you probably were not treated too well by the other light-skinned people. So you have a form of mental slavery by not being able to free yourself mentally by learning how to read or learning how to communicate with the people wielding the power, wielding the whip. Not a good situation to be in. Then you have genocidal slavery. By for instance, the slave or the person that was a slave back then, they didn't get to pick their partnership. So if they were to have children, it would be decided by the person with the whip wielding the power, and that was another method of genocidal slavery. Some of these, by the way, are for trade. If anybody wants to do any kind of trading, they can make me an offer. Another form of slavery was religious slavery, when the dark-skinned people were removed from their homelands, or their homeland was destroyed by the European invaders, and they were made slaves of that way. The other form of slavery was through religion. The people were not allowed to, well, the dark-skinned people were not allowed to practice their own religion. They had to worship the so-called new gods. All these forms of slavery were imposed to weaken them, to break them down, and to make them more easy to maintain subjects, basically. So the idea of the slave masters was to subjugate and mentally condition the individuals, or the dark-skinned people, so that they didn't have to deal with any fights or deal with any issues. No rebellion, in other words.